Hey guys, Jules here with Dropping Jules, and today I have Kyle Kurzhal with me, and we're going to be talking about everything AI integration, and Kyle's your go-to guy. So without further ado, Kyle, let's take it away. Why don't you give us a short introduction of who you are? I know you're in the Gator community and the Sub2 community, and we'll talk about like how we met and all that stuff. So I'll let you take it away, Kyle.
Yeah. So, Julie, thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure as always to get to hang out with you. So
Yes,
for the
likewise.
folks for the folks who don't know, we met at Day with Pace back in December of
Mhm.
2024. So, it's been great because I love getting to reconnect with you and all the other people I met. It's just been fantastic.
Yeah, we had a wonderful time in the Airbnb with Emma cooking for us and the
Oh
group
my
and just
gosh.
hanging out with Mike and Reagan and everybody else, Jim. Ah, what a fun time. What a fun time. We need to recreate that experience again.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look forward to it. So,
Yes.
for your audience to know, like, I always kind of open my videos with, "Hey, I'm your go-to guy for AI and automations," specifically though to help you buy back your time and grow your business. So, I'm a big proponent of like Dan Martell stuff. I really love him. He's got that software background,
Yes.
and I've gone through and I've read his books, and I align with a lot of what he says in there, and he
Mhm.
talks about like delegation in there from a VA, almost a VA or employee
Mhm.
standpoint. But
Mhm.
I come at it from a different angle, which I'm sure he would appreciate as well, of automating.
Awesome.
Let's take a task and delegate it, but we delegate it to a machine.
Correct. Okay. Okay. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So Dan Martell, I love him. Currently rereading Buy Back Your Time and redoing the time audit. So, and I'm so glad you brought that up because part of what, we discussed was automation and how it can help in our businesses and how our audience who's watching, how it can help in their businesses as well. So we can take it from starting with AI, what is AI and how it can help or however you want to stream. And also want to touch base on the interesting article you posted about Manus, that AI and some of the privacy issues. So um, why don't we talk about AI and where do you see it's heading, how we can help our business in real estate?
Yeah, definitely. So I everybody is like all excited about AI nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
and when people say AI, they implicitly think, at least the impression seems to be that they implicitly are thinking of things like ChatGPT or
Mm-hmm.
Claude or one of these other LLMs that are out there. And I think it's probably just because it's one of the first times that people have really had this open kind of access. And I don't mean just people in general, I mean more like the general consumer has
Mm-hmm.
had access to AI in a way that is meaningfully helpful to them in
Right,
their
right.
day to day.
Mm-hmm.
We communicate in language all the time, so that's where I think the crossover has been, that
Okay.
has made this so much more popular. Besides that, over the years, people have just been kind of watching some of the stuff about like, vision detection and stuff like that, which has been
Mm-hmm.
great. But it's very hard for the common folk, so to speak, to know what to do with something like that.
Mm-hmm. So do you think in some of the things that we were touch base and working on, AI can replace? So for example, if you have a wholesale business, what are some of the tasks that AI can replace from what you've seen and built?
Yeah, I think one of the obvious use cases for modern day AI, particularly these LLMs, is going
Mhm.
to be um, text generation related tasks. So, particularly things like writing your copy,
Mhm.
um, doing follow ups, like automated follow ups back and forth. You have to give it some parameters, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It might be helpful if you're needing to like come up with some images and stuff like that, maybe in a landing page or, just little helpful things like that. Sometimes even logos. I think
Mhm.
that's probably where somebody who, is running like something like a wholesale business might be able to
Mhm.
find immediate value. The, there's some additional things there I think people can take advantage of. There's some newer tech that's kind of coming out, but we can kind of get into that as we peel back the layers.
Sure, sure, sure. So, where do you want to take it from here? What would you like to let our audience know about AI, systems integration?
Yeah, so I think maybe something that would be very helpful to folks is to kind of distinguish between um, automation in like traditional automation and AI,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
where you might want to consider one versus another, because everybody is like super excited about AI, and I think for a lot of good reasons. The problem is that, you know, when you have this fancy new tool, and this isn't just a problem for most people. This is also a
Hmm.
problem for the tech guys. Like
Sure.
we all get excited
Hmm.
about the new fancy tools that come out, and then we want to rush to use it
Yes.
and use it for everything. But the
Hmm.
thing is, like that's not always a good strategy. Um, there's a saying that goes, "Use the right tool for the job," right?
Correct. Hmm.
So there's a distinguishing between, I would say, these traditional automations and AI. And where I would look at this is you can think of traditional automations as this set of instructions that you can provide a computer that force that computer to take things step by step in the order that you specified. So it's very literal. It does exactly what you defined as you defined it every single time.
Hmm.
The fancy word for that is deterministic. It is
Okay.
deterministic in how it operates.
Okay.
AI is a little bit more free spirited, we'll say,
Okay.
in that way. So when you think about an AI, you can give it certain instructions, but typically it's not going to give you the same exact answer in the same exact way over and over again,
Hmm.
unless you like in your prompt are very specific, like only respond in this way and in this way only every single time. And even then it's kind of iffy, in some ways,
Right. Sure.
if it's going to respond that way. So unless you are literally giving it the exact output that it needs to respond with every single time.
Okay.
So that has some pros and it has some cons.
So give me an example of when you would use traditional automation versus AI.
Yeah. So I would say that for most general cases, you should always start with traditional automation. So you
Okay.
should start there
Hmm.
and see what you can do with it first,
Okay.
because it's reliable. So it all comes down to, can this thing operate the exact same way in the way that I need it every single time? Is it going
Hmm.
to do weird stuff, you know, or is it going to be able to handle those specific use cases in the way that I want? And so that's why I would say, like, most people, they actually need to just start with the traditional automations. And then there are some use cases you'll run into as you're doing that where you'll find that AI makes more sense. For
Okay.
example,
So
writing
go ahead.
copy.
Writing copy. Okay. So if I were to, so in my business, if we're doing lead acquisition, and when you say traditional automation, using GHL to help with the leads for organizing the leads, filtering, and following up on the leads, versus using AI scripting to automate the like answering the part of it. Like, can you break that part down for us?
Yeah, definitely. So it could be, go high level. It could be something else, right?
Sure.
So there's this step by step, um, I guess, breakdown that might happen when you're
Mhm.
going through responding to somebody who would be a lead, right?
Okay.
So let's say you initially put them in your pipeline and then you send out a text, right?
Hmm.
And then they respond back to you. Well, depending on how you've structured that, you might use like a traditional automation to respond to handle that response in a particular way. But if you need a little bit more flexibility in the way that you handle it, let's say you need the you need to be able to dig into certain questions, maybe prompt the lead a little bit more, stuff like that, but you kind of need it to go in a general path. That might be
Hmm.
a place where you bring in AI. The
Okay.
AI can read that conversation, it can gain additional context and then make some decisions on what should the next point in the process be? So
Okay.
there is this balance of, you might start with the traditional automation,
Hmm.
and then you find little places like that where it makes sense to bring in the AI.
Okay, okay. And tying it back to buy back your time. So, say, for example, for someone who's doing traditional wholesaling and we're doing everything manually, right? So, we don't even have GHL, go high level. Everything's on a spreadsheet where we're tracking the leads. We make the phone calls. And of course, the money is in the follow up, right? So,
That's right.
how working with your clients, how has that changed the way that they do business as far as in terms of time and also money?
So specifically, how has AI changed the game for people?
And automation, both. So traditional automation, because I'm talking basic
Mm,
spreadsheets or writing down in a
gotcha.
notebook. How would that help?
Gotcha. Well, I mean, anything that you don't automate has to be done manually, right? So, Dan Martell's stuff is so great. He really just breaks it down into, okay, let's take the tasks that are like, not necessarily high revenue generating tasks that are taking up a lot of your time, and then
Mhm,
let's delegate those.
mhm,
So for cases like what you described, you know, there are all sorts of little automations that you can add to essentially handle the delegation of those tasks for you.
okay.
So like that initial text, for example, let's say you put somebody in your list on a spreadsheet, what are you going to have to do? You might have to text them or maybe even call them. And
Mhm,
so what you could do is set up your system to send a text right out of the gate as soon as that is
mhm.
entered into your spreadsheet. So
Okay,
it's one less manual step that you have to take to be able to follow your processes and achieve the goal that you're shooting for.
okay, okay, that makes sense. So, but in terms, I mean, I'm sure you've helped other people with it, clients per se. Can put a number to the amount of hours? And I'm sure that we can't put an amount because everybody's process is different. But in terms of time, what do you think
Yeah.
that would save someone?
Yeah, so I'll give one example of something that I did for somebody within the last several months. They needed a scraper made for them so that they could buy back a huge amount of their time. They were spending hours and hours and hours going through this app that they use regularly to pull data. They were
Hmm.
putting into a spreadsheet and then making calculated decisions on what they should do for their clients and customers. And so what we did, instead of them having to pull that data manually, was
Hmm.
we implemented like a web scraper so that they could just give all the little items that they needed,
Hmm.
hit go, and then it just runs through the website, pulls the data, puts it into like a CSV file, and
Hmm.
then it automatically downloads it for them. So then they're able to take that data, put it in their spreadsheet, and do all their calculations, and it saved them massive amounts of time. Like I'm talking like they were spending something like, I mean, honestly, it would have been a full-time job if they were doing the data aggregation perfectly all the time.
Oh wow.
Maybe more. And they just couldn't handle it. So they were just doing the best that they could. So this gives them all the possible data that they could need in a
Hmm.
very short period of time. We're talking like maybe an hour or two
Oh wow.
for these.
That is insane.
Yeah,
Yes.
depending on how much data they're trying to get. So that's one example.
Hmm.
There's another example I think that probably a lot of people are sleeping on for their own businesses, and that's voice AI for handling
Oh,
inbound calls.
let's hear about that. Tell us
So
about that.
yeah, so I know a lot of people in our community are like really excited about things like Prop AI, right?
Sure.
That go
Mhm.
out and make those cold calls for you. Um, But what I'm really more excited about is an AI that can handle taking the calls for you that
Mhm.
are coming into your business.
Okay.
I'm very interested in, how do you handle situations where you have inbound leads and how do you automate those pieces so that way you can buy back huge chunks of your time.
Okay.
So these AI systems, these voice AI systems specifically, if you haven't played with them yet, they are so good, and they're getting much better, to the point that you could really say that I think that these voice AI systems could essentially replace traditional receptionists who are taking calls all day long.
Oh
Not to
well,
say that we won't have
we
receptionists
won't have it,
for
but
various things, but saying that we could probably take a huge chunk of time back for our team members by handling these different calls.
mm,
Um, for example, uh, something I did for a client recently, he has like a bunch of different ways that he helps people in real estate. He does foreclosures, he does
mm,
excess proceeds, he helps seniors, he works with sellers. So he's got all these different things going on, but he's like a one man shop essentially with a VA. And the
mhm,
VA, they speak English, but they don't speak quite as well as you and I do.
mhm.
So what do? Do you hire, a new person and train them up to be able to handle all this stuff? Do you have the VA do this? And the answer he came to was, what if I could use voice AI for all
Mhm,
these different use cases, take
mhm,
the data in, put it
mhm.
into my CRM, send him out a booking link, and then notify me that I missed a call. So we did
Wow.
that for him.
Okay. Oh wow. So for each different business, for example, foreclosure, excess proceeds, sellers, whatever else you mentioned, each one has a separate voice AI, or is it one voice AI that you press to talk to? If it's foreclosures, press one, and that AI handles it. Is it the same voice?
Yeah. So in his case, we split his up into separate voice AI agents. So you
Okay.
can think of these as almost separate AI employees that are handling
Receptionist.
different things.
Right. Oh
Yes.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And they field the call, so they're during the first tier. So they answer the questions, the script that he would ask, and then they book an appointment for him if it goes the way that the questions that he has in there programmed. Correct.
That's right. That's right.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
So we walk through his call script, collect all that data.
Mhm.
I mean, it's so good, Julie, that it actually even will ask you to spell your name, and then
Oh
when it
wow.
asks you for your email,
Yes.
it'll repeat back the email to you.
Oh my
So
gosh.
just to
That's
confirm
amazing.
before it moves on, like
Mhm.
you can set these things up to make sure your data is accurate before it goes into your system.
Oh wow, I love that. So that is going to save a ton of time,
Yes.
especially fielding and getting the appointments booked. Wow, I love that. We'll certainly have to talk more, maybe just do a whole session where you can show us what that looks like so our audience can see that, and definitely they'll want to know. I know I want to know more about that. So, what else do you want to share about voice AI and how it's changing our world?
Yeah. I think so I think this is a really big area that people are sleeping on. And
Mhm,
I don't know that people realize all the different ways that it can apply. So
mhm, mhm,
it's great for handling things like inbound leads.
mhm,
For example, if you send out like a flyer, you could put a
mhm.
phone number on that and then have those people call your phone number, especially if they're seniors, by the way,
Okay, sure.
because
Yes, they want
are
to
they
talk.
right? Are they more likely to fill out a form online, or are they more likely to jump on a call?
Jump on a call. Yeah.
So that's one use case.
Mhm,
Other use cases include like, let's say, a replacement for voicemail. You
mhm.
know,
Okay.
what happens when we miss a call to our phone? Do we just send them to voicemail, or could we use voice AI to answer these things, maybe ask some more insightful questions and collect information,
Mhm.
and then put that into some kind of system that summarizes it for us?
Okay.
We can do things with it like set it up for general Q&A. So if you have somebody calling your main business line and
Mhm.
they want to ask about your hours of operation, or maybe some of the products that you have, or things like that, you can feed it databases of your SOPs, company information, all of this stuff, and these things can answer questions based on that information that you
Wow.
provided.
I love it. I love it. How long does
Right.
it take to set up, and what's roughly the cost? I'm not sure if that's something you share or if it's something that's customizable to the client.
Yes, it is definitely
Can you hear me?
customized. Yes, it is definitely customizable to the client. Um, I would say actually every case has to be customized to the client. Like
Correct.
there
Yes.
might be
Yeah.
some generalities that apply to certain similar types of businesses, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
you're doing foreclosures, like and you're only doing foreclosures. Maybe you could share some commonality between different
Mhm.
businesses there. But I think the magic is in how to fine tune these things according to your business processes.
Mhm.
How do you
Okay.
provide the most value? How do you make it feel the best when somebody comes to your business, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
um, pricing wise, like we're right around at like a starting price of 3,000. So
Mhm.
if you want like a single AI agent to be able to field these calls for you, submit some data into your system, maybe send a booking link or something like that with a single call script, then that's going to start at $3,000. And then we'll work our way up depending on how many additional agents that you need,
Mhm.
maybe certain customizations. Like, for example, somebody might have a really complicated branching structure in their call. And
Mhm.
so we might have to do something a little different that's a little bit more custom for a case like that.
Okay.
But we're roughly between, I'd say, delivery time of about 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how complicated it is and how many customers we're serving at a given time.
Oh, that's pretty quick. That's a pretty quick turnaround time. And think about it, right? You're replacing, I don't want to replace someone, but it can help field those calls and they can take the calls and the way it's going to follow every time, right? Compared to a human, like I'm not going to be
Yes.
tired and answer the phone. So I do like that. I don't want to take away jobs, but I see it being very efficient. And especially this part of the initial stage of taking calls and ensuring you don't miss a call. At least they're hearing somebody else on the phone. Because usually, when most businesses they call, you may not get an answer these days. So I love that part of it.
Right. I
Um,
mean, that's like a death sentence for a business is to miss
yes.
the leads that are calling in. So why not set up something, even if let's say you want a receptionist to handle your calls the vast majority of the time, there are
Mhm.
hours where you still sleep. Like, so
Yes.
why not implement the voice AI for those hours where you would typically be asleep?
And this setup fees, say it's one agent, that's a one-time thing to set up 3,000, and that's it. You have them taking your calls for a lifetime or so, or whatever, right? So,
Yes, that's exactly correct. If somebody wanted to hire us for maintenance, maybe you want to make some small tweaks, or you just want you want the assurance of someone being around to be able to
mhm.
fix something that maybe is broken. Then we can structure like a maintenance fee
And
and
pay
stuff
this
like that as
package. I'm
well.
like a
Yeah.
monthly, like to update different things. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
but
great.
you're right. It's a one-time setup fee. I know some people aren't going to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So I'm working on something else a little special right now, Julie. And I think
Awesome.
a lot of people in your who are watching may find value in this. For those people who can't afford that one-time setup fee, maybe they have more time than they have money. Uh, what I'm going to be doing is putting together a set of courses and
Oh.
an online community so that people can go do it themselves and have a little bit of guidance trying to figure out like where a certain use case might apply, like where you might use a certain piece of technology versus another, like go high level versus another one I like, retail AI, for example. So I think that will provide a broad scope of value for a lot of people.
Mhm.
There's, again, some people who just value their time and they have the money, and so they want
Mhm.
it done for them. And then
Mhm.
there's the people on the other end of the spectrum, but I don't think they should miss out either.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you have a do it yourself or you'll do it for them. So, stay tuned, guys. More to come on that. And I'll make sure, whatever Kyle shares, we'll put it in the description so you don't miss out on that whenever it pops up. Yeah, that sounds good. So, okay, so voice AI, that's super awesome. What else you're hiding from us? What else can you share with us? Some nuggets that can help us automate our business.
Yeah. So, there are a bunch of other tools out there that I think people could probably take advantage of.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's important to note like where you're at in your business.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
everybody is excited about AI, right? Everybody's excited about automation. Oh my gosh, I can have the machines do everything for me.
Yes.
Um, but there are certain, I think, places in your journey where you have to shift your thinking in certain ways. So,
Mhm.
for example, the newbie. I have a lot of newbies that like to come to me and say, "Hey, like I hear you're an AI and automations guy. Um, what could I do for my business?"
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what I find is that the newbies are still trying to figure some things out. They don't even know exactly what the core
What?
offer of their
Yes.
business is
Mm-hmm.
or what they're going to be doing for the next, couple of months or even the next year. And
Mm-hmm.
so for those people, um, I would say that they fall into the bucket of people who should take advantage of as many free tools as possible.
Okay. Okay.
So there's those folks. And then once you kind of get beyond that and you know what you're going to be focused on for a while, then there's this period of time in which you start having to define your processes for your business.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this period at which you're trying to work things out. You have to test a thing. Then you figure out, that didn't work, so I go try this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those people, like I would say, you just need to take it step by step, figure out, well, once you have, kind of where your processes are going to be dialed in for your business to make it profitable.
Mm-hmm.
um, then we start looking at, okay, where can we implement automation and AI as a potential automation for certain parts of this business to be able to help you buy back your time?
Okay. So for the newbies, you said, let them take advantage of some free tools. Can you recommend some free tools that they can use?
Yes. So I always recommend Google Sheets, actually,
Google
as
Sheets, yes.
yeah,
Okay.
as like one of the very first tools. And usually, if you can afford it, I would say go get like a Google Workspace. Um, you could use the Microsoft equivalent too. That's out there. But you could spend, like 725 a month on Google, and then you have access to plenty of storage. You can do the Google spreadsheets. You have an email address, so
Mm-hmm.
you could get a domain for, $12 a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, over the course of that year, that's going
Mm-hmm.
to give you a lot of flexibility to be able to track your information,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where you have to start. You got to
Sure.
start by actually tracking the leads that come in. You need some way to keep up with the people that you meet. So that's where I usually recommend something like Google Sheets, a domain name,
Mm-hmm.
you have email, all of that stuff that looks professional. Um, Mike and I were joking earlier about some of these silly Gmail these Gmail names that people come up with. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you could spend just a little bit of money, make yourself look
Make
fairly
yourself look a
professional.
little more professional.
Yeah.
So, for under 25 bucks, well, $12 roughly for the domain and then like 725. So it's actually less than $25 a month is what I was going to average, but
Yeah.
it's a one-time thing for the domain name. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so start tracking on the Google Sheets. Why Google Sheets versus Microsoft? I feel that you're
Okay.
leaning more towards
Yeah.
Google than Microsoft.
So part of the reason is actually because there's a little bit more here going on. And maybe I'm just not familiar with some of the Microsoft tools, and that's okay,
Mhm.
Um, but there are some additional features that you can take advantage of with Google. For example, you can use Google Forms to be able to put it out on the internet. You could share a link with somebody, they could fill it out. Then that information comes in, and that's lead information. You can actually hook it up to your Google Sheet. So
Mhm.
that way it immediately populates in that Google Sheet. You can even set it up to like send you a little email notification when it comes in. So that way
Okay.
that a new lead got filled out.
Hmm.
Um, there's also some really neat functionality that recently came out. Um, I would say within the last couple months, in Google, you can
Hmm.
actually create like booking links, very
Oh,
similar to like Calendly. It doesn't look exactly the same,
okay.
but the fact that you can pay once for your workspace, you have
Hmm.
email, you have a
Hmm.
calendar that you can create
Hmm.
booking links for, plus
Yes.
the forms you can take in leads and stuff. It makes it a really nice powerhouse tool to be able to handle a lot of those upfront things that people need right in the early days of their business,
Sure.
particularly around like sales and marketing.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Okay. So I love that because for the 720, say $10, right, per month, you're paying easy math. That's 120 a year plus the $12 for the domain. So say 132, you're getting a pretty good start on your business. If you want to stay lean, capture all the data and everything that you've talked about. Because I did see the calendar, not the calendar, the Google Calendar. Like once you get the workspace, you're able to have that email. You look more professional. So
Yes.
definitely something to think about. Okay.
And if you really couldn't afford it, you could go get a Gmail that is free. And I believe you still have access to the booking links functionality. So
Oh,
technically, you could do all of this for free as
mhm.
you're getting started. So that's part of the other reason I like Google. You can start for free and then you can kind of work your way up into a paid offer if you really need
Okay.
it.
Now the Google, I know we're going down, we're not really talking about AI, but the Google Calendar, if you have the workspace, you have unlimited. I think you can talk as far as like Google Meet, but I think if it's the free one, you're limited to 40 minutes or something. Do you know?
I think that's correct.
Okay. Okay. But anyhow, I got a sidetracked on there. So newbies, you have a way to, if you don't want to do the next level while you're starting out, you'll get the Google Workspace. Sorry, I think that's going to be along the lines of what we would, recommend to be more professional. You get your name, your domain name, you get your email, your work email, Calendly, Google Link. I keep saying Calendly, Google Link, and you can record and everything on there. So that's a good start. So for the next level, intermediate, what would you recommend? That's when we will come to you.
Yeah, potentially. And you
Sure.
might be able to start even using just some things that are out there. Like you might, I would say, like, there's this crossover point of um, when you are defining your processes, and then eventually you have to hire that first
Mhm.
person, right? You
Okay.
have to have that
Mhm.
first employee and or teammate,
Mhm.
and you start adding more employees, more teammates. When you start adding those friction points, that's when it becomes much more critical to have uh, a more cohesive system, like
Mhm.
a Go High Level or some other type of CRM, for
Mhm.
you to be able to centralize all of your information and then start to do more complex things like making calls, sending texts, creating,
Mhm.
funnels and landing pages, setting up automations, all of these types of things that you need to be able to grow your
Mhm.
business into. So there's that little crossover point there, and when you might be okay for a while
Mhm.
still using the Google Sheet, but you're going to find that over time it gets more difficult to coordinate that information, especially if you are working remotely. Um,
Okay.
that
Sure.
cross collaboration is really, really important, that you
Mhm.
don't accidentally mess something up. Like you don't want to text the same person over and over again, for example.
Sure. Sure. So making sure that your data is clean and you know what you're doing. Okay. So that's when we get into using Go High Level. And is there another CRM? Because everybody keeps saying GHL, GHL. Is there something else, or is it GHL is the way to go? It's a brand name, or the home
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, I'll say I'm a GHL fan personally. Like I use it for
Okay.
my own stuff.
Mhm.
I think they are killer for sales and marketing. And
Mhm.
there's always little things you kind of run into here and there that
Mhm.
it's not perfect, but I think given like the price point that you pay for Go High Level, versus some of these other things, um,
Mhm.
and all the functionality you get, it's probably one of the best ways to go. Um, I'm not going to speak negatively about all these other ones because
Sure.
I haven't used them all. There's so many of
So
them. That's
many.
the thing.
Mhm.
So I picked one that I thought was good and I stuck with it because I
That's
thought that
awesome.
would bring the most value to the most people.
Okay.
So that's how I look at it. They don't. The only additional charges that you usually incur when using Go High Level, unless maybe the white label is doing some additional things there, are going to be things like your text minutes, your call minutes,
Mhm.
um, maybe certain like AI generation functionality, things like that. Things that really kind of cost them extra money to run
Extra. Sure.
versus their software, their primary software, like their base automations, and CRM and things like that, that you pay like that flat fee and you're done.
Got it. And what's it cost for Go High Level monthly? For
Yeah,
some.
right now they're charging 97. If you go straight to Go High
Oh
Level, they're
wow.
charging 97 per month. And then like, you know, the texts are not that much. The phone numbers are not that much, like
Hmm.
unless you're doing heavy volume.
Okay. Okay. So that's definitely something that they can look at. Okay. So that's perfect. So we talked about automation. We talked about what newbies can use. Let's change gears a little bit. I'm curious about the article that you just put out about Manus. And for those of you who don't know what Manus is, I'll let you explain because you're the techie guy. So there's like ChatGPT, there's Claude, and there's something called Manus. So Kyle, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Manus AI is this next step in the direction of AI agents automating huge portions of people's business. And so, as a tech tool, I actually think it's really incredible. It does a really good job at taking the request that you give it,
Hmm.
creating like a task list essentially, and then divvying that out to the right underlying tools. So my understanding is just at a cursory glance of it that it is taking the tasks that you give it and then running it through these other specialized like AI agents that have access to particular tools. For
Okay.
example, like you can ask it, hey, I want to create this website. Will you help me generate the landing page? And then you can say, oh, I want to deploy this so it's live on the internet, which is
Oh, wow.
really cool. So that makes the process really streamlined. So as a piece of technology, you can see how powerful it is because you can do a lot of different things with this and they have tons of tools built in.
Okay. Okay. So it's like replacing, replacing a human basically if it's doing all that and taking it to the deploy stage as well. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
we're getting in that direction.
Okay.
Um, I still think there are probably places that it's lacking. Um, there are things that people don't really consider, like on the
Mhm.
tech side. For example, like somebody might get really excited about having it generate a web application for them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
from a guy who has been doing web app development for 11 years now, I can tell you that there's a lot more that goes on with web app development than just
Mhm.
building the thing.
Okay.
So
Sure.
once you actually build the thing, you have
Hmm.
to think about things like testing, then actually getting it deployed on your server, and then any additional features you need. You need
Hmm.
to think about how are you going to maintain the servers? What happens when you get tons of people starting to use your stuff? Can it
Hmm.
scale? Can it handle it?
Hmm.
Um, there's all sorts of little problems that happen in the maintenance part of
Okay.
development.
Hmm.
And most people overlook that. Maintenance is like one of the most expensive parts. So that's a good example of where maybe I think something like Manus could be very helpful for like prototyping, but I don't think it's going to be a replacement for some of
Hmm.
these really high value, like traditionally high value skill sets that people have. And if you think you're just going to be able to replace these people, I
You're
think
not.
you're fooling yourself.
Right. Right. Are there any concerns about Manus, in your opinion?
There are. So I have some pretty big concerns around privacy. And
Mm.
some of this applies to some of these AI agents that aren't necessarily Manus, but I also have specific concerns about Manus.
Okay.
So
Do
one of
share.
my so one of my general concerns about some of these AI agents is people who don't understand what's happening may not realize that they're doing some things that are potentially hazardous to their security. So, for example, let's say you have one of these AIs go out, log into a website for you, so that way you can then make it post an article or something
Hmm.
like that. If you are just giving the AI your login credentials,
Hmm.
those login credentials have to go to a server, which
Mm.
means that whoever's controlling that server has access to your login credentials.
Oh wow.
And the software industry has spent a very, very long time figuring out how to handle login security in a way that will help protect you. So you're basically bypassing all of the guardrails if you just hand over the credentials to this AI, and you
Wow.
have no idea how it's going to be used. Like you
Hmm.
don't know if they're doing any kind of special encryption on it or
Hmm.
anything like that. So you put yourself at unnecessary risk.
Right.
So I
Wow.
think I think some of that can probably be solved over time as we build more of these tools, especially as these companies that are providing services like Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, as they
Hmm.
start to build interfaces that these AI agents can work directly with, I think that'll help resolve some of those security issues.
Okay.
So that's the
But,
one of the general issues that I have. The other issue that I have, particularly with Manus, is actually in its formation and
okay.
who's running it. So Manus AI was developed and is run by a company called Monica,
Hmm.
and they are a Chinese-based startup.
Okay.
So if we look at the history of Chinese companies and what they have done, uh, we see a pattern of intellectual property theft, of exploitation of users' data, and in some cases trying to shut people down. And
Mm.
so the reason part of the reason behind that is because these companies like TikTok, for example, which is a really popular one, they are tightly connected with the Chinese Communist Party. And
Okay.
because of that, the Chinese Communist Party has certain, let's say, influence in these companies and what they allow you to do on their platform.
Okay. Okay.
So TikTok is a great example. They traditionally wouldn't let you like criticize China, for example. If you
Okay.
criticize China, you're out.
You're
The
shut down.
same,
Hmm.
yeah, the same free speech protections that you have in the US, you don't have those in China. Um, there are cases in which, for example, TikTok was installing some additional software on people's devices that was monitoring the other applications that were being used.
Okay.
And who knows what has happened with that? I haven't heard anything about it for a while. But
Mm.
if that's the type of thing that these Chinese companies are doing, I wouldn't want to use something like Manus AI for my business critical stuff because I don't know how they're going to use my data.
Correct.
And if I like deploy, let's say with the example of the website, if I deploy the website to
Hmm.
their hosting services and I'm relying on that, how do I know they're not going to just take it down tomorrow?
Right.
Because
Right. For
maybe
sure.
I said something about how I don't trust Chinese companies.
Right.
So there's all sorts of little concerns about that. I think a savvy business person needs to just be understanding the risks that they take and that they expose their leads or their customers to when they're using these other services.
Sure, sure. I think that's super important, the privacy and then also who's running it, just to be careful. So, to use it and to test it out for non-business related, of course, definitely you can try it and see. I mean, I use it for a couple of things, but nothing crazy. I'm not integrating any of my logins or anything with it. So, until we know about it. So,
Yeah,
what else?
prototyping I think is a good use case in
It's a
some
good
way.
use of it.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
but
I love.
you still have to be careful because you don't want to like prototype with something that's really critical to your business,
Sure.
and maybe that gets ripped off.
That's interesting because you don't even think about that aspect of it. Having it patented and just used by everybody else. So okay, good to keep in mind, guys. So keep that in mind when you're using Manus. We're all about Manus. Like Pace talked about it, and everybody downloaded it, and it was free. And I think like after everybody on Pace's community downloaded it, they started charging or something. I don't know. It just happened. Like they moved to a pricing platform. So
Yeah,
are you using the free or the paid version? Or are you just
I'm really not honestly using any of them.
any of them?
I
Okay.
might try the free version on a machine that I'm not worried about being compromised.
Got it. Okay.
So maybe there'll be some testing there that happens, but yeah, I'm even hesitant to run some of these things on my own personal machine
Personal machine.
just
Oh,
because like I don't know what they're installing. Like if I install it as an app on my phone, I don't know what
mhm.
kind of cookies that they're adding to my browser that they might be tracking me with, things like that. So I'm just very skeptical.
Very, yeah,
And
yeah,
so
cautious too. So that's awesome.
I just try to be cautious, like
Yeah.
you're better off being a little more cautious when it comes to your data privacy and your security.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. I think our audience would definitely want to know about that.
Yeah.
We went through quite a bit today. We're talking about the automation, AI, voice AI, um, different things that newbies, novices can use. From our perspective, we're an owners club, and what do you think you can help our community with? Most of us are usually real estate. Some are, wholesale foreclosure, buying, co-living, business acquisitions. Um, what do you think we need from you? Because we don't know. We're
Mm.
high visionaries. So,
Yep.
as a systems guy, what do you think you can offer us? And, what do you want to share to our audience?
Yeah. So I'm so glad you asked, Julie, because this is something I've been working on so hard,
That's
like
awesome.
brainstorming over the last several months.
Wow.
I've had to peel back the layers. So I started with telling people, hey, I can help you with systems, automation, and AI. And then you know what the response was that I got from the visionaries?
No,
I
what do you
It
get?
was crickets, or it was,
Nobody needs it.
or
We're like,
that's
we don't know what
great.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea how that applies to me.
Correct.
So, what I've done is I've peeled back the layers over and over again. And
Mhm,
phase one right now for me is I am looking to help people with voice AI for inbound calls
mhm.
and landing pages and lead funnels,
Oh, okay.
plus the little automations that kind of go around these things. So, really, you could think about it like if you are handling inbound leads in some form or fashion, I can help
Mhm.
you with that.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome. I mean, that's a lot of us in our community because we're all
Yes.
taking inbound calls one way or the other. So,
Yeah, it's like one of the most important pieces of a business as they're getting started is how do you handle the leads? And
mhm.
ideally, if you're setting yourself up well, being able to handle inbound leads
Okay.
because you need to be able to buy back your time. You don't need to waste your time trying to do all these fiddly little bits. Either delegate it to a person or automate it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Now, you said voice AI, the landing page, the funnel pages, and also the little tweaks around it. Are those separate packages, or how's that broken down?
Yeah, those would be separate. So
Okay.
if somebody needs a voice AI, we go through figuring out exactly what they need
Mhm,
around that to be able to handle those calls on their behalf. And then
mhm,
if they need like a funnel landing page for their business, we have a separate discussion about that. Um, those are just two different ways to take leads in. So you may still need both, but
mhm.
we have to discuss different aspects of both, right? It's just
Sure.
very different methods of taking
Mhm.
leads in.
Okay, okay. So, how does it work? So, if someone's interested in learning more about what you do, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, as far as learning more about me, you can find me on various social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. So you can find me in any of those places. You can send me a DM if you want to reach out, add a comment in one of my posts. I'm trying to post every day for the next year. So feel free to connect with me in those places.
Mhm.
And if you need a particular service, right now I'm putting together landing pages so that way you can go through, fill out your information, and then we can set up that intro call and have a discussion around what you need in your business.
Awesome, awesome. And you can give me that information too. I'll put it
Yes.
in the description so they can get a hold of you, your link, your booking link. So, guys, please take advantage. As visionaries, we don't know what we don't know. So at least book a call with Kyle to see how he can help. And then also, you're on YouTube. He does produce a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of interesting stuff on AI and technology. So that's amazing. I see his posts every day. Not every day, but when it pops up on my feed on day whatever. That's why I saw the Manus one. So that was pretty awesome. So, yeah, what else you want to share with our audience before we kind of wrap up? And
Yeah, I would say just think about your processes, because I know a lot of the people that are listening are probably visionary, and you guys want to go right at it, make this sales, follow up with the leads, and I think that's fantastic. But you need to think about how is the system, how are the systems, the processes behind the
Mhm.
scenes set up to be able to handle the lead flow that you have into your business. So there's this balancing act, and this is something Alex Hormozy recently talked about in a newsletter. I thought it was genius. He talked about this balance of supply and demand in your business from
Mhm.
the perspective of handling leads. You
Mhm.
either have too many leads for your system to handle, and then you've got to update your system to rise to the occasion, or you've got a
Mhm.
system that can handle more and you don't have enough leads to fill up the system.
Oh,
So, you know, visionaries, I think, will lean more on the side of
yes.
getting more leads, more
More leads.
clients,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Making more sales, which is great. And you need that. But you also need to make sure that you have thought through what are the steps in your business that you have to go through and that your clients go through on their customer journey, and how can you make that a great experience for them so they'll keep coming back to you.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing. That's a really great nugget when you sit down and you think about the balance. So thanks for sharing that. Hermosi, one of my favorite guys. So yeah, for sure. What else? Oh, tell us, how long have you been in sub two?
Oh, I've been in Sub 2 and Gator for it'll be almost it'll be 2 years in July.
Oh wow, both of like which one did you join first?
I joined both because I'm a crazy person.
Okay, I was gonna say. Usually, I people join Gator and then sub two. So did you join
Yeah.
both at the same time?
Well, technically, I think I joined Gator first, but literally like a day in the
A
same day I
day
joined Sub 2,
on the same day. Oh, you.
or something like that, because it may have been a day or two later. But I start the whole reason that I joined Gator and Sub 2 in the first place was because I was super interested in business acquisitions.
Mhm.
Um, Cody Sanchez was a huge influence on me.
Mm,
And, I thought, oh man, I'm a tech guy. Like, I can come into these businesses that are a little out of date and add my technical experience to help build up some of the systems and grow the business. So that's where I started. And I was running into problems with figuring out, well, okay, how do you get the money to buy the business? And
yes.
so when I was figuring out the financing part, the algorithms were like, hey, you should watch Pace Morby stuff on creative finance. And so the Gator stuff was really prominent, right? Because it's
Mhm.
very focused on the finance part,
Yes.
like on the capital raising part of things and lending and so on and so forth. So I thought that was where I needed to be first. And then I saw the Sub 2 stuff and I was like, you know what? I
Mhm.
probably need both sides of the coin here if I
Sure.
really want to get the full
Mhm.
picture. And so
Oh,
that's
that's
why I joined both. And I haven't looked back. I'm thankful I did.
yeah, yeah. So I'm thankful you did too because we got to meet and our community is so strong with everybody helping each other. So definitely, if you want to, join the community, click a link below. There's the funding side, which is Gator, and then it's the real estate side, which is Sub Two. I joined both because I wanted both sides, just like Kyle, to learn on the real estate and also on the funding. So that's our little plug there. But back to Kyle. Anything else you want to share with our community before we go?
Hmm. I just want to throw out there that, there's always a lot to do. So just take it step by step and iterate.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
know, even as a tech guy, you try to think of as much as you can up front, but um, at at the end of the day, you have to figure out how to break things down and iterate and take
Yes.
it piece by piece.
Hmm.
So don't let yourself get overwhelmed and say, I can't do all of this, so I won't ever start. Just take that first step, and the it'll compound over time. So I'm always happy to answer people's questions in our community, especially. So if there's things that you have questions about, please reach out. Even if I can't respond immediately, I'll always try to get back to you at some point, and you may have to just ping me again. So I really want our community to to grow as a whole. My Mount Everest, Julie, is to help 1,000 people buy back their time and grow their business with AI and automation.
I love
So, you know, I would love for those 1,000 people to be in our community. I'd love for the majority of them to be paying customers, but I'm also happy to help the people who can't pay. So
that's
let's grow together. And something that might be helpful, Julie, something I've been talking about with one of my partners, Aaron Oliver, is I think we're going to be probably starting maybe May 3rd. That's what we're targeting, to do an open Zoom for people to come in and ask questions about systems, about automation, AI. So if there are folks out there listening to this who would find that valuable, we'd love to have you. We'd love to answer your questions, help however we can during those sessions. I find that it's great to get one-on-one as best as you can, but at some point you run out of time.
Yes.
So we're trying to handle this in a group setting so people can take those next steps forward.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Kyle, you're such a go-giver, and I'm so glad we met. And I love your Mount Everest. I should have asked you that earlier, but helping others, it's so rewarding and also fulfilling for you on your journey on AI and automation. So thank you. I really appreciate you coming on the channel and sharing your nuggets and dropping some jewels for everyone. We'd love to have you back. We can break it down and take a certain section that you may want to share with us. And also, I'm looking forward to you changing lives in the future, especially in AI as AI develops. Thank you so much.
Really let's do it, Julie. Sounds good to me.
All right. Take care, guys. Good seeing you all. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye. If I can say goodbye.